Chapter 11 continued. Boys, we should keep up with the light, Melody urged, brushing Tarzan off of her. The glow of the lantern slipped around bends, flickering off the earthen walls along with the elongated shadow of their host. Melody did her best to keep him in sight while the two overly confident ninjas performed their stealth maneuvers, ducking and diving, rolling and cartwheeling. The underground passage soon led to the rusty metal door which Kruger opened. Stepping outside into the back area of the house, he headed for the small dock. Untying one of the rafts, he then stood aboard, rested the lamp at his feet, and began pulling himself steadily along the water. The kids watched from a distance as Kruger made it easily to the other side and climbed ashore. Quickly, so as not to lose him, they ran to the extra raft and followed in pursuit. But by the time they crossed and hauled their raft up onto dry land next to Kruger's, he was nowhere to be seen, not even the glow from his lantern. Tarzan pulled the small flashlight from his pocket and switched it on. I guess we can use this now. Beaming it around seemed to make their outer surroundings appear even dimmer. Their night vision interfered with by the torchlight, the rhubarb jungle loomed forebodingly. Looking up at the moody evening sky, it was obvious the weather had been turning. We should still be able to make it back before it rains if we hurry, Tarzan decided, quite incorrectly. As they walked tentatively towards the entrance of the rhubarb maze, already the air had become ominous and the clouds threatening. As soon as they stepped huddled together beneath the canopy of the burdock, the darkness thickened. Despite having played here just the day before, nothing was recognizable in this light, or lack thereof. The wind had started to pick up, causing the stalks to sway eerily, like hundreds of magical broomsticks from the Sorcerer's Apprentice of Fantasia. They pushed on, swallowing their nerves, unaware that things were about to get really dodgy. There was no more silly banter going on between them. Everyone had sobered up, now fighting off thoughts threatening to swamp them with fear. On and on they went, deeper into the maze, hoping to catch a glimpse of Kruger's light. If they'd stopped earlier to ask, I wonder what Lady Wisdom would have advised. Excuse us, ma'am. We were wondering, do you think we should go back inside where it's warm and dry, or should we carry on in the dark, in our pajamas, before an impending summer storm? Duh. There was a long, low rumbling from somewhere afar off in the sky. The wind had whipped up significantly now, their overhead cover starting to get blown about, allowing spatters of rain through. Tarzan halted, causing Melody to bump into him from behind. She grabbed a comforting hold of his onesie, making no effort to let go. Huey sheltered his sister from behind. Splaying the tiny torchlight back and forth between them, Tarzan spoke what the others were thinking. It's getting rough in here. I say we just forget it and head back lickety-splick. Melody held on a little tighter to Tarzan, droplets streaking down her glasses, making it very difficult to see much at all. It's lickety-split, and yes, I think that's a very good idea. Wait, I think I see. Huey didn't finish his words in time. With a massive, interrupting crash, the storm came upon them unapologetically, and loud. The rain suddenly came down heavy, the wind pushing strong. Lightning and thunder were frighteningly close. One Mississippi boom! The children quaked at the sheer awesome power of the sound, as well as from the cold. Dauntingly large water drops now fell from the sky, inescapable and unavoidable. It was like a barrage of H2O gravity bombs plummeting from a swarm of invisible B-52 bombers flying overhead. Air raid sirens wailed in their minds, the puny shaft from Tar's light scouring the heavens, failing to perform adequate searchlight duties of war. Their shelter compromised, they turned, leaning into the roaring wind. Attempting to make their way back along the path they'd come, walls of burdock were being flattened all around them. "Did you say you saw something?" Tarzan hollered up to Hugo, who was now in the lead. "Where?" "Give me the torch," demanded Hugo, reaching behind. "We can't see." The baton pass was incomplete. They shouted uncomprehendingly to one another, vainly trying to top the noisy elements. Wide leaves whipped back and forth, stalks snapping in a frenzy. Hearing an eerie sound in the air, Melody recognized the whistling of the zipline wire being whipped about by the storm. "I think the tower might be close by," she gestured to the boys. "We might be able to find shelter there." Everyone understood. Tar, still clutching tight to the light, pushed his way to the front. Relieved to have a helpful objective to focus on, they followed the whistling sounds of the wire hidden from sight. And then, success! The tower appeared, a black shape rising before them. But the wooden structure was wobbling severely, exerting its best efforts to resist the wild, heavenly onslaught. Odd pieces of lumber were being ripped off, hurled dangerously through the air. Then, the object of their hope for immediate refuge gave up its struggle against the ferocity of the storm. "Look out!" Melody screamed, pointing to the zipline tower they'd just stumbled upon. The kids panicked as the tower came smashing to the ground between them, forcing them to split apart. Tarzan rolled out of the way, narrowly avoiding being hit by a heavy flying 2x4. The fragile bulb inside the torch broke as it fell from his hand onto hard, stony ground. A little ways off, Hugo sat up after having thrown himself the other way from the falling tower. Before him, through sheets of pelting rain, he could just make out the jagged pile of what used to be the tower. Visibility was next to nil, what little light they'd had having been immediately snuffed out. Getting quickly to his feet, he felt the urgency of reconnecting with the others before he got hopelessly separated. Skirting along to the right of the hazardous pile, he shouted their names. His voice was weak in the face of the unrelenting storm, as if competing against a portly baritone in a tux, belting out a show-stopping operatic finale, threatening never to die. La! Somebody pull the curtain already. But not to worry, there was Tarzan, bending over, fiddling with the broken torch. "Where's Mel?" he hollered to him frantically. Tarzan looked up, shook his head. Negative. Melody felt along the cold, wet ground for her glasses. They must have flown from her face when she'd narrowly escaped being buried alive by falling timber. Without them, she was pretty much blind. Although in this harsh weather, they weren't much help anyway. Still, glasses aren't cheap, and they're one of the most valuable possessions to someone with extremely poor eyesight. Her groping fingers came upon her spectacles, broken in two beneath a fallen piece of lumber. This was very worrisome. Slipping the two halves into a hidden pocket, she squinted in the darkness. Where are the boys? She wondered anxiously. She really did not want to be out here all by herself, especially without glasses. Sensing a warm glow of light through the battered rhubarb, she hastily scurried after it, calling the boys' names as loudly as she could. Holding high the lantern tightly in his grip, Kruger regretted coming out, having suspected the storm was likely to hit. Still, having lived here for so many years, he was used to the occasional summer hurricane. And he didn't like to let anything interrupt his routine. He was a little sentimental and made a point of visiting the site regularly, rain or shine. It was too important to him. He just hoped the kids had been a little smarter and had stayed back at the house. He smiled with amusement, recollecting the absurdity of their childish antics in attempting to sneak up on him in the tunnel. They must be cozy by the fireplace, drinking hot cups of cocoa by now. Having attended to what he'd come out for, he waved a tender farewell, then hastened through the falling vegetation towards where he roughly knew the raft to be. Feet tripping and stumbling through latticework of fallen burdock, hair being whipped across her face, Melody struggled blindly towards the blessed light. She could just make it out up ahead. How did the boys get over there so fast? But the faint glow moved and then quickly vanished. Wait, she pleaded to the darkness, hands reaching out in desperation. With an extra push proving futile, she fought her way closer to where she thought they'd been. But she was all alone, separated from the boys once again. Melody! Melody! Hugo and Tar called out, frantic to find her. They had circled the demolished tower without any luck. She was nowhere to be found. How could she just disappear like that? Hubert wondered, apprehension saturating his voice. He kicked at the loose timber. Unlikely she was buried beneath. We'd better keep moving, Tarzan urged his friend, tugging him away from the pile, pieces of it still being picked up and played with by the hand of the hurricane. The maze was no more, but the havoc being wreaked on the jungle was causing new obstructions. The torrential downpour was chewing the earth into mud, monstrous winds rearranging thick piles of demolished rhubarb real-time, slapping heavy leaves at their faces. An entirely new labyrinth of destruction lay all around them, in dire need of navigating. Sticking closer together, they followed the path of least resistance. Unfortunately, the easiest way led away from the water rope and the mansion towards an unfamiliar open field. On the plus side, their polyester onesies were adding a bit of protection from the elements, but they were by no means waterproof oilskins. Amidst crackles of electricity and thunderous booming, they slogged and clambered their way through nature's wreckage. Finding a low stone wall between them and the edge of a long, sloping grass field, a solitary barbed wire stretched along the top. Flapping hysterically on it was black, tattered witch's cape, the eerie scene startling in the flickering light. Hand over impressionable heart, they could have sworn they heard cackling and shrieking in the night air, or at the very least, the screeching theme tune from Hitchcock's classic shower scene in the movie Psycho. Hi, 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 hi! Avoiding the barbed wire entangled with farmer's plastic wrap, they climbed hastily over the slippery flat stones, grateful to make it out alive. Hurrying up the hill, they hoped to get their bearings. But this was not the best idea. Now, out in the wide open, there was absolutely no shelter from the storm. It might have been much wiser to stick close to the stone wall, but what could they do? They weren't about to go back and risk ending up in the brewing pot of a coven of wart-nosed witches. And surely the odds were minimal that they would get struck by lightning anyway. Were the pagan sky gods so petty as to keep a sinister eye on two helpless kids in pajamas? Surely not. Hugo suddenly froze, gripping onto Tarzan's arm. What? Shouted Tar. The electrical storm still streaking above them, he looked towards where Hugo was pointing. Not too far away, large silhouettes were being illuminated. It was a herd of hefty cows sheltering against the far wall at the top of the hill. These hearty bovine bells were not faint of heart and could weather most of what the seasons might throw at them. However, in their midst loomed the giant bull they'd made fun of on their very first day here. And the boss bull was in a protective mood. Sensing the approaching threat, he rose, slowly surveying the boundaries of his coveted harem. Rippling muscles twitching in the rain, he glared at the intrusion in the middle of his field, his territory. Even from that distance away, the boys could hear powerful lungs snorting out hot steam from ring-pierced nostrils. Iron-clad hooves began pawing the mud. That was all the warning they needed. Quick as squealing piglets in a slimy pig pen, they slithered in their PJs as fast as they could for the nearest edge of the field. The bull charged. With an enormous bellow, he rushed down the hill straight for them, chewing up the ground as rapidly as a ravenous freight train. The sheer tonnage of the mammoth beast, thundering the earth behind them, made for louder in their terrified minds than what was pounding from the heavens. Panic and fear seized them both, and rightfully so. "Run!"